I'm so excited to bring back to the show today Jennifer Powter, weight loss and mindset expert for women over 40, which is, you're talking our language here today. Jennifer believes that by the time we've hit 40, we really tried it all. The Weight Watchers, Atkins, medically supervised programs, detoxes, cleanses. It seems like nothing works, or at least not permanently. So, sure, you lose the weight, but your old habits constantly creep back in. And so does the weight. Not feeling good in your body has taken a serious toll on your confidence, and it feels like your weight is on your mind all the time. There comes a time in your life when you want to stop wasting your emotional energy on weight. And the time is now. I love that you said that. We're going to talk about all of this today. I couldn't agree more. I love your topics, Jennifer. I'm so excited to have you on today. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so honored to be here again. I just love talking with you about this, and I love the depth that you go to in your interviews. So thank you for having me back.
Oh, seriously, the pleasure is all of ours. And I just promised myself in this next season of life, and we hit 300 podcast episodes. And I was like, the next 300, I just want the people who inspire me most. And
Oh
so
my gosh,
I
congratulations. That's
emailed,
amazing.
I emailed you. I'm emailing my people to be like, come on, pour your love and wisdom over our community. So thank you.
Love that.
Yes. Oh man, where do we start with you? I think one of the coolest things about you is like you're leading really this movement of showing women that we still can become this best, healthiest, most energetic version of ourselves. And I would love to hear kind of your talk around that with your community and giving people the hope and belief system that that can even exist for them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so powerful. And again, like I'm 49, I work with women in their 40s, a lot of women in their 50s, early 60s and 70s. But there's something that happens for women where you go through life, and whether you're in your 20s and you're schooling and then you're dating and then you're getting married and you're wifing and then you're momming and you're careering, like you just have this outpour of energy to everybody else, often except for yourself. And there's something at this midpoint in life where either the messages get louder, you go through something that's perhaps more difficult, more painful, and there's a pause where you kind of wake up and you go, is this it? And you might have some sadness around, is this it? Like, is this my life? And the good news is your life, what you are living right now, is only a result of every past decision that you made, which means your future literally is unwritten. And what you decide today, how you choose to think today, how you choose to commit to change today will shape everything in your future. And I just think too often we write ourselves off. We start to think that it's impossible. And often that's because diet culture, especially with weight and even other aspects of life. I know right now, relationships and parenting, it's a huge topic. But diet culture has put women in such a rock and a hard place. Like if you're not extreme, if you're not counting points, if you're not following things perfectly, you'll never be successful. And it's also way too hard to do that. So then we're not successful and the failures just start to stack up. And so I just want to say that no matter what you've done, if you've tried it all it means is what you've tried, it just hasn't worked for you. That approach is just not the right approach for you, or it hasn't gone deep enough to sustain the changes that need to happen to also rewire the belief systems that will actually be the foundation from which you create that change. You know?
Yes, amen to that. Yes, I feel like, especially again, we're going to keep using this 40 plus community because we can hear what you're saying, but then like there really is this wall of you've tried it all, and then maybe you creep over into this other even non-diet mentality side. Like you're like, I get it, I'm off the diets, I'm gonna come over here, and you feel like you're really trying to do it even a different way, and you're still not seeing results.
Yeah.
Do you have that frustration with your women?
Well, again, it's what they're presented. We're presented with intuitive eating and just trust yourself or love yourself, health at every size. And like, so people will swing from dieting where they felt deprived and restricted to this big overswing. What's happened for us is we have very little understanding of food, food production, what's in our food. We have a very minimal understanding of what our body needs. And I think it's very easy to over or underestimate what you're putting in because it's often very high density, low quality, but you don't need a lot, but there's a lot of energy in it and we are still nutrient deprived. And then you go to intuitive eating. And I've got a real problem with the intuitive eating movement, frankly, because if you have not got healthy emotional coping mechanisms, which I didn't, like, let me just be the first to say, hello, I didn't, then your intuition can tell you to go eat a cookie and drink a glass of wine when you're sad or tired. And so a lot of women in their plus 40s are pretty sad and tired these days. Like they're running on some pretty low energy. That's what your intuition tells you. Just, oh, you deserve it. You had a hard day. But that's actually more self-harming behavior than self-care behavior. And for many of us, we're having to learn what true self-care behaviors are. And that's the
Yes.
reframe. Like, it's hard to engage in self-care if you've got patterns of self-abandonment. It's a
Right.
skill set.
Yes, and it's also hard to believe. I think that women can hear self-care is so important, but there's a lot of like calming down, pulling back, settling in with self-care that happens, and it goes against the grain of that any of this actually will do any good for me on this health journey, on this weight loss journey.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, take that time to sit and do something for yourself, maybe read, and that doesn't compute with, no,
No.
I'm supposed to do more. I'm supposed to work harder, go stronger to see results.
Totally. Well, that's what you're praised for and rewarded for as a woman. You're praised for sacrificing yourself, whether it's, oh, look at you. I don't know how she does it all. I mean, there was a movie made about that with Sarah Jessica Parker. There's money rewards in your career if you sacrifice yourself and work long hours. And so very often the very pattern that we're trying to change is the pattern in our life that's allowed us to feel accomplished and successful. There's
Mm.
nobody out there praising a woman for, oh, that's so wonderful. You're taking some time for yourself. Like, at least there wasn't in my world.
Yeah.
And can I just also say, we're wired to avoid pain. And if you actually slow down enough to start feeling from the people I'm working with, it's terrifying because they have used everything under the sun to run from that pain for so long that sometimes subconsciously, and again, we have to recognize the difference between conscious, like nobody's here like consciously, like, yeah, I want to stay overweight and run from my pain forever. I didn't say that. But I was like, I like my miserable comfort zone subconsciously. Getting out of it feels too hard, which wasn't actually true. And I also didn't want to deal with all that pain. I thought if I dealt with it, I was going to last forever.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Beautifully said. And I can just see a listener going, interesting. That if I really did dig, if I allowed myself to go there, which is scary
Yeah.
and brave,
Yeah.
but like might be that next game-changing puzzle piece that gives the next step of success. You're an open book, Jennifer. Can you
Very.
tell us, like, you've lost weight, you've really kept it off, which I think is the hardest space to live in. Give us some of what have you found along your journey that you're like, this really works well for me. These are still my big watch out points. How, like, give
Yeah.
us
Oh
this
my
part
God.
of
Yeah. So I always want, like, women need to understand that there's two journeys involved with changing your health, changing your weight. The first is the fat loss journey. Okay.
it.
So the first is you have to understand that weight loss, fat loss, just a chemical process. Like, it's very scientific. It's not as complicated as the world's making it out to be.
Mhm.
And I always say, if you've tried healing, you've done your work on your microbiome, like biome, you've been doing all the functional medicine tests, and like maybe you're not getting to the root issue yet. So
Mhm.
like we have to understand that. So for me, really understanding food, like really understanding that, oh, it's this little, like it's just a little tiny chocolate ball, but oh, it has 230 calories. And I'm not a 6'6" linebacker. I'm a 5'6" woman. Like, I'm tiny. I just don't need that much food. I might
Mhm.
want it, but just
Mhm.
like I want to go to the mall and spend $10,000 today, I won't, because there's consequences to blowing my budget. Right. So that was like this first. And remember, I had a master's degree in this stuff when I was overweight. I had done my entire study of education in health sciences. So
Mhm.
I knew a lot. And the biggest thing was that as long as you stay tactic focused, tactics being the action. So any typical diet out there, all you're seeing right now on social media is eat your protein, drink your water, get your 10,000 steps to blah, blah, blah. And like, oh my God, put a fork in my eye. You might be able to do that for like 2 weeks, but then life is going to life and you're going to have a feeling or 10,000 of them. And the 10,000 steps won't matter because, first of all, it takes an hour and a half to get that in. What busy working mom has an hour and a half at night to be like, oh, I'm going to go get my 10,000 steps? And then if she does, she's going to feel so proud that she did it. She's going to come back and eat 6 Oreos and boom, It's a negated. And I didn't believe I was an emotional eater. So number one is I had to recognize that if I wanted to lose weight, I couldn't just engage in short-term habits. I had to engage in healthy habits that would support me for the rest of my life, or else the weight would come back. To engage in those kind of habits, I knew I had enough wherewithal to know that I would have to do the work mentally and emotionally to heal so that I wasn't outsourcing and using food as my crutch to deal with the other things in my life. And I was going through an unhappy marriage. I had 2 little kids. I had a mom who was very ill. My dad was estranged from my life at this point. Like, oh, there's a lot of stuff there. But I was like, blinders, let me just focus on my weight because at least I can feel like I'm in control about that and everything else can fall apart. And it can be a big distraction technique. I've got women who focused on their weight loss for 20 years and they're like, there is so much I haven't paid attention to. And that's the wake
Interesting.
up. Yeah.
Hmm. No, so
So,
interesting.
journey one,
Yeah,
weight
journey
loss.
one. Okay, love it.
Journey two, you might hear this too, Lindsey. I hear women say to me all the time, I just don't ever want to have to think about this. I don't ever want to have to think about food. I hate stressing it. I just never want to have to think about this again. And it's like, listen, you probably think about your kids and you probably think about money and you probably think about your partner. You think about the things you care about.
Mhm.
We need to be able to start thinking about ourselves because we care about ourselves, not because we hate ourselves.
Mhm.
And that emotional regulation has become the game changer in weight maintenance for me. And being able, that emotional resilience and stamina, because life continues to get hard. Like I'm at a point now in my life at 49 where my mom's got terminal cancer. My kids are 17 and 15. They get older, the problems get bigger, marriage, right? Like there's never ever a time where you're not going to have life storms. It's who we become as we handle them.
100%. And I was going to say, even as you're talking, like, sadly, your story's not uncommon, right? That
Yeah.
probably most of the women that you talk to can rattle off a minimum of 2 hard things going on in their life, if not three, four, or
Absolutely.
five. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And just shifting of that expectation. And I think you've done a really beautiful job of this, the shifting of expectation that it's supposed to at some point get easy. And it should get easier because you just get more expert
Practice.
status at it.
Yeah. Yeah, you get good at what you practice. If you practice
Hmm.
self-abuse, if you practice negative self-care behaviors, you get really good at those. If you practice lying to yourself over and over, if you practice not caring about yourself, you get good at what you practice. I was an expert at all of that stuff. Like I was like really good at it, but it was not serving me. That's the wake up. And I just had a client where she's 11 weeks in and she was so scared to begin. She was so scared to start. She would have been about 215 pounds. She's 5'4", hadn't been below that in like 2 decades. Okay. And so skeptical, but her health was starting to decline. There was joint pain, aches. Like now it wasn't just about vanity, right? Now, as we're approaching 50, 60, this is about how are we going to age? Like, yeah, it's good to feel hot, a pair of jeans, but it gets bigger, right? If we don't change now, what's it going to be like? And we're finally 11 weeks in, and we just had a call a couple of days ago, and she's like, it's all finally clicked.
Hmm.
It's clicked. Like, I all the things you've been saying. And this is why, if we're up to the big game of change, we often need support because if we're in it on our own, we can get out of it. We can let ourselves off the hook. But she showed up and she was committed to the change, even though she was scared and didn't know how. And then she's like, it's like the balls dropped and I'll never go back. But it took the suspension of reality for her to believe in a future that was different than her past for her to get there.
Yes. Oh, you use so many good words in this. I feel
Oh,
like resilience was one of them. Like, how do you keep showing up? You
showing
show up.
up.
I love that word because it really is. And you have a time period in which you can have your people keep showing up. And what I feel like you're saying is they carry your belief system that they can do this, they can change until they can build their own,
Yeah.
which is huge. It took her, what you said, 11
11
weeks to get.
weeks.
Mhm.
And now she's like, now she's got feelings of excitement, not trepidation or self-doubt. The self-doubt has been replaced with confidence. But of course, we all have self-doubt when we do anything new. We haven't done it or done it successfully yet. I always say you have to borrow someone's confidence in you when you don't have enough in yourself. And that is why I firmly believe women need women. And we also need mentors. We also need support systems. If you're listening right now, like think of the rock you are for so many people in your life. Who's got you?
Right.
And who's got you? We
That's
need
so good.
somebody to have
Yes.
our back. And an app doesn't have you. You plug your data into a fitness pal or you get a little check-in message. It's a phone. It does not have compassion and empathy or kindness in it. And I really think at midlife, we need this more than we've ever needed it before.
Oh, absolutely. Two thoughts with this. One, when you said 11 weeks, that's almost just for our listeners, that's almost 3 months worth of work and working on something. And
Yeah.
just then starting to like really see. And that's such a common thing for my clients as well. And can you imagine like when you start to tell someone it might take 3 months for you, that's a long time for somebody to hang in there, right? But not so much when there's a coach with you who like you get to show up and you emotionally get to go through this together. But if like to your point, if you're just on an app for 3 months, you're not going to stick with something for 3 months till you start to see
No,
change. You're going to
look
burn
at
out way before that. So that's
totally.
just an interesting, I keep seeing that more and more in my population. And I have to be honest, I have two clients right now who it's almost been 6 months and they're just now getting the flow of routine and weight loss. They're like,
Totally.
it's happening.
Totally.
Six,
Oh, Lindsey,
yeah.
like me too. Like it's like every journey is so different. And I just said this too. Like some women will come in and they'll be really good students and they'll tick the boxes and they'll do the tactics, but they won't go deep in their emotional work. So they'll get the physical result first, but then they hit some sort of what they call is a plateau. It's never a physiological plateau, it's a mental emotional one. And that's their next level journey. I've got some clients who come in and they go deep right away and it's like painful and it's like Mount Vesuvius of like feelings coming out of them and they don't lose weight for a little bit and then they go deep and they do it. Every woman's journey is a perfect journey for her. And one of the things I invite your listeners to possibly consider is instead of weight loss being this like bane of your existence and a forever thing that you've had a problem with, maybe look at it as a gift, that it's a symptom of something deeper. And if you're awake to that, then you have this beautiful opportunity in your life to actually heal. And
Mm.
how incredible is that to heal some of those old wounds, belief systems? And we think 12 weeks is a long time, but if you've been struggling with this for like 10, 20 years and you could be free of it for the rest of your life, I think that's a worthy investment of effort and time.
100% agree. Yes. Do you still find little things creeping up that you uncover and you're like, oh, that just came back, or I didn't really give that enough
Oh,
thought?
yeah, absolutely. Healing is repetitive. And so for me, I'm very transparent about my upbringing, about growing up in some like a chaotic household where the functional alcoholism was very present. And I didn't really understand the impact of that, like what that would have on me as a daughter and how it would cause me in my life to shape shift and keep the peace. And I was always looking and trying to create safety everywhere.
Mm.
And I healed enough for to a point that I could tolerate it and I could feel comfortable, but life has a way of saying not quite enough. And so there's been some recent things in my life. And one of them is my mom's diagnosis and the real decline in her health. And another one is in personal relationships. You get the opportunity to continue to run your patterns or to evolve from them. And so what we have to understand too is when we talk about the brain, how we wire behavior, there's a reason my programs are scientifically designed to be minimum 3 months. Many people are with me beyond that. It's because it takes that long for the neural pruning to happen, where we start to prune off the pathways that aren't serving us and actually create new neural connections. And there's times where I'm like, the first thought is, I could just go and I just need a glass of wine. Or and you'll have the thought and then you'll be like, that's not what I need. So I have a skill set that I've also practiced to learn how to pause and really ask myself, is that what I need? And make a better decision. And I think that's what the weight maintenance journey is about because I feel like I have complete freedom with whatever food, alcohol. Like I don't ever feel limited, ever. But I feel
Which
very
is
deliberate and
amazing.
conscious. Yeah.
Right. It is amazing. And I'm sure that because the freedom is there, you can approach food or even alcohol, maybe at this point, with it's not deprivation. It's not 100%, right? Like
No,
there's a place for all of it somewhere.
nothing's bad in my world. French
Hmm.
fries, some of the worst foods, fried food. Because what happens is with diets, we start to have moral judgments of food and then of ourselves. It's not just that that food is bad. I'm bad if I eat it. Like, oh, I was so bad today. Like, I'm sorry, you're an incredible person no matter what you've put in your mouth. You made a choice. My biggest focus with my clients is let's just take your power back from food. Like, it's a cookie. How much power can the cookie really have over you? Look at who you are and what you've done in your life. Let's reclaim it. When you recognize you can be at choice and you understand why you're choosing it, then you can make better decisions. Then you've got your own sovereignty and autonomy back. It's like nothing's controlling you. You're making decisions.
And like my shoulders just went down listening to you. There's just
Ah,
breath in
okay.
there. That's yes. And I'm looking at your beautiful book behind you, The Stop Sabotaging Your Weight Loss. I want to talk about this for a minute because that word sabotage comes up a lot. And maybe you
Yeah.
could give a personal example of sabotage or your clients' examples, but where do you see this mostly happening? Or like, what's your most common advice around self-sabotage?
Yeah, it's some that your listeners aren't going to like. A lot of women are like our age really identify as being perfectionists. And
Mhm.
whenever somebody tells me that, I'm like, oh, really? Right? Like I feel bad because so perfectionism is just a socially acceptable form of sabotage because nothing ever is perfect and the goalpost always moves. Like you set yourself up to be in conditions where you're never winning. And that's probably a familiar, painful experience. So if you can't be perfect, why do it? Right? Lets women off the hook from even trying because if you don't try, you can't fail. So fear of failure would be connected to that. And if you're going to do it perfectly, how long can any of us do anything perfectly?
Right.
So then you fail that way. So that is one of them. Unhooking from that is where your freedom lives. Many women want to be perfect because we get our value outside of us from what we do and how perfect we do things instead of actually claiming our value as just this incredible human being who's here on this earth, who has a good heart that's full of love and is doing their best. And we're human. And
Mm-hmm.
so, right? Like,
Yes, yes. And the unhooking piece. There's so many moments with all of this that I think people can go. I do hear you. I know I keep saying that. Like, I think individuals can hear it and then go, but now I don't know what to do with that.
yeah.
That's me, but now how do I unhook? And you have great steps and like great advice around doing
Yeah,
it. And it
how?
doesn't resolve right away, right?
Well,
Like it's
people
a,
don't want to do it though. I've got like, okay, you got me fired up. I just did an Instagram reel about this the other day. There will never be there's no injection, no pill, no diet that you can take that will ever magically dose you with the motivation to do the hard work. You just simply have to become willing. And it's like one of the best tools. And listen, I'm the person who rejected everything. Okay. I was subconsciously addicted to my pain and my struggle and my suffering. I just was. It took me getting to a point where my life was so bad that I was like, okay, like I'm willing to do it all. I was somebody who was too busy for journaling. That's not what's that going to do? Like I condemned it before I'd even given it a try. Meditation, I'm too busy, uh, all of that stuff. And so I very slowly introduced it into my community, into the work that I do, because unless we get clarity of thought, which if you are never writing it out, and I don't mean journaling needs to take an hour with a candle and need to om and pray or any, I mean bullet point, messy, pads of paper. Like if you can see it, I've got a pad of paper here that's just like full of scribbles because we all have an entity within ourselves, the inner critic, that like its peak experience is your pain and suffering. And so as long as you can stay in your own head and never get clarity of thought, you can stay in your own stuff forever. But the minute that you force yourself to take a pen and put a string of words together in a coherent sentence, you can now decide, am I going to accept this as my truth? Is this my truth in one moment? What do I want to do with this thought? And
right.
that's the freedom. But it's like saying you want to hang a picture on the wall, and I'm like, oh, yeah, great. Well, there's a hammer. The hammer will put the nail in. And you're like, I don't really like hammers. Like, I used to hammer once, but I didn't really like it. Like, maybe there's something else. And then you complain about never having the picture on the wall. And it's like, dude, it's just a tool. Pick up the hammer and put the nail in the wall. Like,
That is such a great visual, and I've never heard it before. It's so good.
I don't like the color of
Yes.
the hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
a
know. I've had
no.
other people use hammers. That might work for them, but I don't think it'll work for me. Well, it's just the nail in the wall. Pretty sure it'll work for you. It's a tool. So, like, we often resist. And, like, for anybody listening, the magic will be in whatever it is you have a gut level hit on, but you're resisting doing. That is your cue. Because at this stage in life, if you're resisting your own inner guidance, the messages and lessons are going to get more louder and more painful. And that's the journey.
It is, and it is a journey. And I feel like people going, oh, I'm already tired, and all this seems like is work. It is work initially, but there is reprieve on the other side, and
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
easy on the other side. It's just you just get better
Yeah.
and it gets more fun because you see results,
Yeah.
that yeah.
And you know what? I think women aren't used to feeling proud of themselves. Am I allowed to
Mhm.
say that? Like, think about even when you cook a beautiful dinner and someone compliments you and you're like, really? I think it needs more paprika. I don't know. Or like, you're like, oh, does it? I think it's a little salty. So few of us. And I grew up where I was taught be humble, don't brag, good girls, nice girls, don't brag. I think the culture is different now. But for many of us, there's norms that we were conditioned to that allowed us to be good girls. And I just think we need to outgrow that.
I agree. I totally agree. I'm maybe going to sway off topic a little bit here, but I am just looking at these beautiful books behind you. And do you have interest or want of, is there another book in your future?
Lindsay. Yeah. Oh, so like my husband, I wrote two books very quickly and he was like, okay, like that's a lot. And I was like,
Be
what else
done.
do I have to say? I was like,
Uh-huh.
what else is there? But in the last year, actually in the last 6 months, there's been something percolating. I really understanding like how is it that so many women are having the same issues with the same belief systems? Like what's the thread? And so I started to do some research. So I'm Gen X, you're Gen X if you're between the ages right now of 44 to 59. Okay. If you're shoulder seasoning in that, like late 30s, maybe later 50s, you would have had the same influences exerted on you too. And I'm just gonna say a couple of them because I truly am fascinated. We grew up in unprecedented times. So what you have to remember is Atkins launched his diet in 1972. So even though you might have been a child, you had a mom who was taught to be terrified of carbs. You just were. And that would have been passed on to you. Then the war on fat began in the late 70s, early 80s. So then now your mom's afraid of carbs, afraid of fat. I grew up believing that if it was fat free, it was free for all, right? Licorice, everything candy, everything was marketed. So it's full of sugar, but oh, hey, it was fat free. At the same time, the food giants were producing food in crazy quantities and the supersize me movement came out. Do you remember that? Everything was supersized. So
Yes.
value, big, like low money, big value in terms of portions. But then we also had Kate Moss walking the runway being so skinny and this beauty ideal of extreme skinniness with the supersize me movement. Like, how did we ever stand a chance to learn what healthy portions were, what healthy food was? And there was no health at every size or body positivity movement. Like I remember Oprah wheeling her fat out onto stage that she'd lost. I was with my mom watching this. I would have been like 12, 13. And the message I got, it wasn't just that fat was bad, it was being fat was bad. And
Mm.
I was a teenager. My mom didn't eat carbs, but she would eat chocolate, she would eat sugar, and she drank. So, like, here we are as these children, teenagers, young women, and now we're at midlife and we wonder why we can't stick to just tactic behaviors. That programming runs deep. And I think that there's something to unpack there for all of us. I think that I don't know. I'm fascinated with the topic around it, but to really reflect on your own upbringing and to be like, how am I the way that I am? What shaped me? What was going on beyond just me? What was your family of origin like? What were the messages? Many of us grew up with our moms being the first women in the workplace. We came home to empty households and Fruit Loops. We came home to latchkey kids, broken families, divorce was on the rise. There was so much that we as children had to navigate. And again, you've got to remember, we're wired to escape pain and seek pleasure. As children, teenagers, pleasure would be in a box of cookies. It wasn't in a veggie plate that was made or served. You didn't do that. So I think that there's some stuff that is stuck. I'm so curious to hear if anybody resonates with this. Like
Yeah.
I'm like so curious, but I'm like, holy cow. I just think it explains a lot about what women have to unpack. Um,
It does. And I think you are brilliant about rattling this stuff off, and it makes so much sense. And then my brain goes to, where do you get excited about taking that? Like just helping women understand that this can be part of their background. What's your kind of want out of something like that to
what
be
I
revealed?
want is for
Hmm.
women to get that whatever their situation they're living in right now in a state of their body or even their heart space, soul space, it may not be their fault that we couldn't have controlled how our moms reacted, the societal messages of the time, our culture, our upbringing, but it is your responsibility if you want to change, and you can. That we have to accept that we are who we are for all of these reasons, but you can either go on and blame that and blame your parents and you got taken to a Weight Watchers meeting at the age of 10 or taken to a doctor and told by your mom that I don't want to have a fat kid, or you had a bad experience with gym. All of these things existed in the past and there may not be your fault. It may not even be fair that any of this happened, but it's your job to do the work now to change it, and that there's beautiful responsibility in that and also possibility. You're not a
Right.
write off.
Right. And you're so good with hopeful messages. That's what I want the listeners to hear. That, to your point, there is hope on this other side of this journey for you, that you can feel
Yeah.
like a totally different person, but you
Yeah.
do have to do the work to get there.
Yeah. You
And you
do. And
might
it's
be, yeah.
painful. I cry every day. Like my clients cry. It's like a snake shedding a skin. There's going to be aspects of you, of me, that just don't serve me anymore. And I have to be willing to say goodbye. And the new skin, so metaphorically, it's tender, it's not scaly, it's there's pain involved in transformation. It's like the butterfly, right? Those caterpillars that cocoon. I always say, like, I'm really seeing this midlife point where we kind of cocoon a little and we go through that cellular DNA goo phase where we're reorganizing ourselves to emerge as that butterfly. But even coming out of that cocoon, you have to put pressure to release yourself and be beautiful. And that beauty exists for all of us women. But sometimes you go into a broke down place before you emerge again. And that's nature. We're a part of nature.
Again, beautiful visual. This is so interesting because so I was telling you when we were off mic that I hosted my first retreat, and we were sitting around by the pool as kind of like a wrap up and just having kind of a silent moment. People were just going one by one and giving their thoughts. And one of the biggest things that comes out, and again, my community was anywhere at that moment from 40 to mid 70s.
Wow.
And the women, the common message was like, do you know how good it is, A, to be around all these women because I don't have women like this in my life right now, but also what's next? And this is what you're going towards. It's unraveling, unpacking what was so that we can see the what's next. Because there's this excitement of we've got years and years ahead of us that we better love, or that's a long time not to like what we're doing or be in the body that we're in or surrounded by the people that we're surrounded by.
Totally. It's
You
your
know,
life. You're the creator of it. Like,
mhm.
we lose our power in thinking, oh, this is just how it is, or this is just how it's going to be. And that's not true. Everything that's happening right now is a previous decision. So make new decisions if you don't like what's happening right now, and then let the change unfold. But get conscious, wake up to the possibilities of it. Like that's, and I can please understand when I say I know it's not easy, but I do believe it's worthwhile. And I'm so privileged to be in a position where I see women who start with one shred of hope, like that one shred of hope, that one testimonial, the one success story that they've seen where they're like, oh, she was like me, like she did it, like maybe I could do it too. And it's that one shred of hope. That's all you need. You have to just want it a little bit more than you're afraid of it. And that
Mm,
can be enough to get going.
that's a great one-liner. Want it a little more than you're afraid of
A
it.
little bit
Just a
more.
little. Oh,
Yeah,
you
because
are
you can
so
build on that.
wonderful. I love your books. I love your podcast. I want to make sure everybody hears this. You have a weight loss simplified podcast, and you take people's testimonials, right? You take people's journeys and these topics that we're talking about today. I
Yeah,
could
I'm
binge
so
on your
excited. We just
episodes.
relaunched it,
Uh,
Lindsey. Like, I can't believe you've got 300 episodes. I'm like, We've got 15. We just released the second season. But I was saying to you again before when we were off mic, I forgot how powerful it was for women to share their story and for other women to hear it. So season 2, yeah, we have got women of different ages, different backgrounds of what they had to go through to create change. And it's really real. Like it's very unfiltered, very raw. And yeah, you do get a dose of my opinion. It's very science driven in terms of the fat metabolism piece of it. But this emotional intelligence piece and this behavior change piece, what I need everybody to understand is that that's scientifically driven too with what we know about how humans respond to change. And so I love that. I love being nerdy with that. But then also just weaving that science with so much love and compassion for each of our individual journeys.
Yeah, my wish for listeners would be like go binge on Weight Loss Simplified and
Thank
you
you.
keep it in your ears because anytime we're going through something, we keep saying it's hard, you've got work to do. When you have this plugged in your ears along with the work, it all of a sudden doesn't feel so hard because you feel very connected and very attached, which also makes me want to ask you. So if somebody, that's kind of like a great free resource for individuals, but if they're going,
Totally.
I'm ready to take this deep dive, what would your options be that you would guide people towards?
Oh my God, to connect with me. My books, you can buy them on Kindle and Audible, but you get them for free on my website. You can get the PDF. I just want people to have them. The podcast, you can hear some of the stories in it. But on my website, jenniferpowter.com, there's a book. Talk to me. Just talk. Because just like in dating, I say we don't all like the same person. We don't, the coaching relationship is fairly sacred. You want to make sure that there's an energetic click and that I just want to be part of women's success stories just like you do. And not every approach works for people. I've got a colleague, she doesn't believe in any kind of food tracking or measuring or weighing or anything. She's a total intuitive eating advocate. Well, that works for her community, right? That
Right.
doesn't work for mine. People are like me, intuitive eating. I didn't have the emotional skill set to understand what my intuition was trying to tell me. So I had to do the work to figure that out and learn. So yeah, thank you so much. It's so kind of you to direct people there. I'm so excited to have the podcast out. I can't wait to be like you and share that I've got 300 episodes of purpose and support and inspiration behind me.
Oh my goodness, please keep going. You can't stop. Too
Thank
much to
you.
offer. And I always have you in this way, but if you could wrap your arms around our community today and make sure if they heard nothing else, what's the one thing you hope and pray they heard today?
Take a chance on yourself. You're absolutely worth the bet. That would be it. Just take a chance
So
on yourself.
good. Ah, so good. You're the best. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks.